Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Collar and Elbow Wrestling Podcast, where we bring you an unrivaled love and passion for pro wrestling. I'm Kitty Oak, and I'm joined, as always, by my tag team partner, Chris Harris. Chris, how's it going today?
What's going on, Bubs? Royal Rumble 2001. We got a lot of stuff to talk about.
You know, Royal Rumble 2001, that was definitely one of the better ones. But today, we'll be doing a pay-per review, and if you didn't know, that's where we dig deep into the archives to bring you a fresh perspective on a significant pay-per-view in the history of WWE. Today, like we mentioned, we'll be reviewing Royal Rumble 2001.
Easy to say. This is I like the Royal Rumble. Wow, I can't even say it.
There you go. Yeah.
Each year, because it's they usually make it a pretty exciting event. This one turned into something a little more exciting than most. This becomes a bit hardcore at times and has a pretty high finish. So, and throughout the pay-per-view, we get a couple good matches to talk about. So we have a lot of stuff to talk about.
Yeah, that was a recurring theme through this time, and we noticed it in Backlash 2000, really all through the year 2000, and even through 2001. These pay-per-views had great main events, but what really carried them were the undercard. There was a lot of solid wrestling all around throughout the entire pay-per-view.
Yeah, and this one particularly is going to be headlined by the Dudleys and Edge and Christian, as well as Chris Jericho and Chris Benoit. You've heard that before, Chris Jericho and Chris Benoit. This one will be a ladder match. So the match of the night will not actually be the Royal Rumble itself, at least in my opinion. It'll be some of the undercard we'll talk about. But this one worthy of being talked about as one of the better Royal Rumbles of the time.
Definitely the lead-in was really good. Stone Cold had come back from being out for a full year with, I believe, a neck injury at the time, and that was one of same with Backlash 2000. Stone Cold coming back was a huge part of the lead-up and the build into the pay-per-view, and really what sold the pay-per-view as a whole.
Yeah, and they kept using the Stone Cold return. He'd won the Royal Rumble two times before this, so you really weren't, I guess, expecting him to win this one for a third time. But as we'll get to, of course, he does end up winning this. If you didn't know, I'd hate to break the news to you early.
Spoiler alert.
He does end up winning it. But yeah, they use Stone Cold to sell pay-per-views, and Vince McMahon knows how to use his talent to the top and make money off of it.
Absolutely. And so why don't we go ahead and just jump into this bad boy. Like you mentioned, the Dudley Boys went up against Edge and Christian for the tag team titles, and I know you're not one for having a title match, let alone the tag team title match, lead off the pay-per-view, but they really didn't have a choice on this one, and it was a great way to lead off the pay-per-view.
Yeah, the Rumble's a bit different. This one, as far as the card is concerned, I'm completely fine with the Dudleys and Edge and Christian leading this one off, because there's only, I think it's 4 matches on the actual pay-per-view. So this one leading off with the tag team titles was pretty good. They got to get the crowd excited early. So this was a great match to start with, I think.
Yeah, and the match itself was a pretty solid match. Honestly, I thought it was a little sloppy, but I think that just was because they were only given about 9 to 10 minutes to work. But all in all, it was a pretty solid match. The lead-in to it, you had Edge and Christian give the double concerto to the Dudleys, which caused concussion issues. So head trauma and concussions were a huge part of the build to this one.
Yeah, and if you're not familiar with Edge and Christian doing the concerto to people in this shtick that the Edge and Christian were using at the time, go ahead and look this up, because this is pretty good stuff they were working at the time. The match was pretty solid. I did feel like they were a little shortchanged on time. It felt a little bit rushed, but both teams are really good. They put in pretty good work. We saw a lot of heel tags, a denial of a hot tag to Bubba Dudley, and several pretty good spots in the match. And this match turned out to be pretty good.
Yeah, with when you have these 4 in the ring, you know it's going to be a good match regardless. Bringing up the heel tactics, you had the classic Edge and Christian trying to run away as soon as the match starts, just try to leave and just, we don't need this. We're just going to keep our titles and get out of here. But the fans were definitely into this match, and it's crazy to think that such an over babyface team like Edge and Christian were became really good heels, and then the flip side of that, the Dudleys, who were a really good heel team, crowd got behind them. They became a very good babyface team.
That's a great point. By default, you think the Dudleys are kind of a heel team and Edge and Christian are the face, but in this time, they were the opposites. And the Dudleys were the face, and Edge and Christian were doing a bunch of heel tactics to try and get the crowd against them, and they were really good at it. And Edge did that great throughout his career. Nothing against Christian, but Edge became a little more known for it. And we see that throughout the match. Several heel tags, the denial of Bubba Dudley getting in the ring on a really hot tag. The ref didn't see it. So it was really well worked. The crowd really got into it, and they liked it, I think, most of the match, actually.
Yeah, the crowd was definitely into it the entire match. One thing I like to bring up is funny JR-isms, and this match definitely had a really good one. At one point, the King, Jerry Lawler, says that he loves when Edge talks trash, and so JR quips back with, "Does that get you aroused? You say you love it so much." JR really is the best there ever was.
Yeah, the back and forth between JR and the King, I think, is never going to be matched again. We still want that to this day. We're never going to get it again, obviously, we all think, but during this time, you really got to go back and listen to just the stuff they say, let alone the match by itself is one thing, but the commentary alone is another piece. It's just gold by
absolutely.
itself.
And, we put up the concertos, and definitely go and look that up. That was some great work by Edge and Christian, but that's something that nowadays you just won't ever see again, at least in the WWE.
Yeah, you won't see it televised, especially, and that goes with talking about currently Brock Lesnar versus Randy Orton. You see a lot of blood in their matches currently. They're doing house shows that are not really televised on the network because they're doing things like that they're not shown on the PG rating that you see of wrestling anymore. So this was a time where you could really appreciate not only the work in the ring, but some of the extra stuff that the guys did, including the chairs and some of the weapons to make the matches really get over.
Right, and back to the ending of the match, you had Edge and Christian try to go for the concerto on Devon. He gets out of the way, gets the hot tag on Bubba. Bubba Ray comes in, and finishes the show on Edge and Christian, and the Dudleys end up winning, taking the titles away from Edge and Christian.
This is something I noticed when I watched this. I had to rewind about 2 or 3 times to make sure I wasn't crazy on this, but at the end of the match, Bubba Dudley goes for a pin because he's the legal man, and Mike Chioda, the referee, is counting it, but you'll notice that Devon Dudley gets the actual 1, 2, 3 count at the end, but he was never the legal man. So you'll see that in booking, it really doesn't matter who's the legal man. So after they hit the 3D, even though Bubba's the legal man, Devon gets the cover, but Mike Chioda could care less. He just counts the 3 regardless, and the Dudleys walk out tag team champs in a really good match.
Yeah, Mike Chioda knew who was supposed to win, and he just went for it.
Yeah, great referee.
We'll get more into. Yeah,
that's why he became senior referee when Earl Hebner left. He really knew how to just go ahead and just go with the flow of the match, make sure everything got over, and he did it right.
Yeah, and we'll actually get to Earl Hebner later on in the Triple H Kurt Angle match. But yep, tag team match was really good. And then after this, there was a couple backstage segments. Michael Cole did an interview, and golly, what was going on with Michael Cole's hair? He looked like the typical late 90s grunge kid.
Right. Can we talk about that for a second? Because he had frosted tips on his dark brown hair, and he was young, and he was a up and coming guy. He was starting to do, I think he was doing play-by-play at the time for SmackDown a little bit, and he was also doing backstage interviews. And this was perfect. Now that I look back, I stared at his hair. I could care less what The Rock or anyone else really had to say, but I would be staring at his hair like, Michael Cole, what year is this, man?
Yeah, the hair was absolutely atrocious. but after that, we went to the first Drew Carey segment backstage, and this is something that I definitely have an issue with. But I just didn't feel like he didn't really fit the whole environment, talking to Stephanie and Triple H in the locker room.
Well, I mean, I'm not going to argue with you there, but you have to understand Vince's perspective here of trying to reach different audiences, people that really could care less about your wrestling, and they care more about, you know, comedy and things that are going on late night TV. And Drew Carey at the time was kind of the guy, you know. He was doing.
Well, he had the Drew Carey show, and then he had the improv. Anyway? Yeah.
Yeah, and then he did his pay-per-view, which he obviously dropped the name of several times on here, really overtly, without trying to cover it much. But, I mean, this is a ploy by Vince, you know, to try to reach a different perspective, I think. And I understand you having a problem with that, because it eventually leads to a little diminishment of talent, but by bringing in a celebrity.
Yeah, no, okay. You know what? I'm definitely glad you brought that up, because I'm kind of gonna go on a little bit of a tangent here. Vince has an over-reliance sometime on bringing in celebrities to try and get that casual viewer in. And you know what? Yeah, that's okay for the temporary, you know, boost in ratings that you're going to get. But damn it if Vince doesn't just like to throw those celebrities in the ring and beat up on his trained professional talent. And one of the big ones that comes to mind real quick is Stephen Amell when he went up against Stardust.
Okay.
Cody Rhodes. Yeah, and yeah, because if you didn't know who Stardust was, that was actually Cody Rhodes.
Oh, no
if anyone
way.
didn't know.
Oh.
Yeah, I know. Anyway, he brings in this untrained actor, Stephen Amell, and actually books him to beat Cody Rhodes. You know, someone who had all the potential in the world to be a world champion. And, you know, I get it. You want to bring some of his fans for his show, I believe Arrow, but in the long run, you're hurting the credibility of your talent. You know, they see Stardust lose to Stephen Amell. They're not going to expect him to get a big win. After that, it's just, damn it, Vince. That's
a pretty good example.
It gets me bucks.
That's a good example because we've seen what has happened since then. We know that Cody Rhodes wasn't a fan of the Stardust character, let alone losing to an actor who has no, you know, professional training whatsoever in any type of wrestling or sports entertainment. So you really do diminish him and you take away any credibility of what that character can become. So if you were to believe that Stardust was to go after some type of title against another performer on a show, you'd be like, well, no, I don't believe that because he lost to an actor. So I mean, I get your point, what you're saying there.
Yeah, and it's happened way more times than that, and that's just one of the examples I'm going to bring up because I could do an entire show on the celebrity effect in WWE, but I just wanted to get that out there, just how it grinds at me, it pisses me off because in the long run, you're hurting your talent. You're hurting the actual wrestling fans who are gonna watch week in and week out. But yeah, that's all I'm gonna say on that.
But I mean, I think you should look at it from Vince's perspective. Vince looks at things from how can I make money off of this thing? I mean, we've talked about Pete Rose before. He made money off of Pete Rose. He made money off of Drew Carey. He made money off of several other
but he made money off of them. He made money off of them at that moment. However, in the long run, he no longer can make money off of that performer that he jobbed out to some celebrity. You're gonna lose your actual meat and potatoes, which are your hardcore fans, the actual wrestling fans, and they're gonna get fed up and they're just gonna stop watching. And you're definitely seeing that now.
Yeah, and I get your point with Amell because that definitely happened, but you can't say the same about Pete Rose, and you can't say the same about Drew Carey because they didn't do anything in the ring. They got, you know, destroyed or intimidated.
You're right.
By Kane.
And I think Drew Carey. I'm not saying anything bad about Drew Carey. He actually did a really good job. He took up a spot in the Rumble, but he went in there He didn't want to get involved with any of the wrestlers because he knew he would get hurt. And then when Kane came out, he just took himself out.
Yeah, and Kane came out. That was a really good, setup of the order entry, and we'll get into that in a little bit. But Kane came out right after Drew Carey and lit the turnbuckles on fire with his fire and all that stuff, and it was pretty good stuff. We'll get into that in a little bit, though.
Yeah. Sorry about that. We kind of got off on a little tangent there,
tangents
but
happen.
back to the pay-per-view, and then the next segment. Yes, they do. Next, we got an awesome APA segment, and I love these backstage segments with APA, and I'm pretty sure they were actually drinking. Yeah, those cigars were not lit up, but I'm pretty sure they were actually drinking.
Yeah, Ron Simmons and John Layfield are legitimate drinkers. They go to bars after their shows. In between shows on the road, they go to the bars and they drink. So this was real. This was at a time where it was allowed, you know. Vince now puts a little PG segment on some of these things so there wouldn't be real beer in the cans or something like that. But at a time like this was real beer, and this was really happening.
Yeah, and then Crash comes in, and I don't know if he was on something at the moment, but he comes in and just starts threatening APA, saying, we're friends, but if you come after me, I'm gonna throw your butts over. And I got a good chuckle out of Crash.
Yeah, because Crash can intimidate anybody, let alone the acolytes.
He's 400 pounds, though.
No, he is.
Allegedly.
He does weigh a lot, but it's all alleged. He's never been validated.
Yeah, he refused to step on a scale.
Yeah, he would never do that.
But anyway, on to the next match, which was a fantastic match, probably one of the top 5 one-on-one ladder matches in history, and that was with between Chris Jericho and Chris Benoit. And we actually, in our last paper review on Backlash 2000, reviewed these guys going for Chris Benoit's Intercontinental Championship, with Chris Benoit as the heel, Chris Jericho as the chasing face, and we have it here again. And once again, they put on a fantastic show.
Yeah, these guys had a bit of an on and off, feud for the whole year, and even a little bit after this. This was a great rivalry that Vince continually used to try to get pay-per-views over, because it worked, because Benoit and Jericho could both work together. They had chemistry, like we've said before. They could work with each other, and you said it exactly. Top 5 one-on-one ladder matches of all time. This one had it right here. It had a little bit of everything in it.
Yeah, this match definitely reminded me of the old school HBK versus Razor Ramon ladder matches for the Intercontinental Championship, because there wasn't a large reliance on high spots like there was at that time in ladder matches, like with the triangle ladder matches. But they really used the ladder as an extension of themselves, not really as a high spot weapon, but as kind of an extension of themselves, using it as a weapon, using it to inflict effective damage on each other, and not really putting their own bodies at risk for the sake of getting a cheap pop from the crowd.
Yeah, I like how you put it as an extension, because there's several spots in this match, but it's not necessarily using the ladder to climb up and jump off of to land on somebody. They use it as a weapon. They use it as a means to hurt their opponent. And even without the ladder, this one becomes not necessarily a spot fest, but there's a lot of stuff that they set up in this match that you could tell, including several other weapons, even a chair for Chris Jericho's benefit, that this one really becomes a really solid match from spot perspective, and even a technical match, which you expect from a guy like Jericho and Benoit.
Yeah, absolutely. And you had different spots with, like, one of my favorites was when Jericho sets up the ladder on the turnbuckle, but then Benoit throws him against the ladder and he flies out the ring. And then he grabs a chair and Benoit does the suicide dive, and Jericho just cracks him on the skull with a steel chair. That was just a great sequence.
Oh yeah, I love that you brought that one.
This was the first ladder match for the Intercontinental title on pay-per-view since 1998 SummerSlam between Triple H and Rock, which was another great ladder match.
That's one of my favorites. One of my first early memories, actually, is Triple H versus The Rock in that ladder match. A lot of A lot of great stuff in that match. I love just rewatching that one from time to time. Like you said, Jericho gets a full-on baseball swing with that chair when Benoit dives out of the ring. Benoit, known for being a guy who dives out of the ring and hits his opponents into that barricade, but Jericho just happened to have a chair, and it's one of those moments where Benoit just takes it right to the face, and it's one of those great spots where it's loud and it really excites the crowd and really gets them into it.
The next really great sequence in that match was at the top of the ladder where Jericho puts Benoit into the pseudo lion tamer or walls of Jericho on the ladder. That was probably the best spot of the match.
Oh yeah, that was the spot of the match. It's near towards the end. I think JR actually calls it a tarantula because it does kind of look like a modified tarantula that you'd see Tajiri use.
I think he called it an octopus, actually.
Okay, then yeah, it's something you'd see that's used in the ropes to kind of used as a modified submission move, but it is an attempted Walls Jericho by Jericho on the top of the ladder. Great spot that they set up. A lot of stuff before this as well. Jericho and Benoit both using the ladder as a weapon, and then we're talking early 2000s here where ladder matches really started to come about, and the ladder became one of the true weapons that were used in many matches.
And I'm glad you brought up JR because throughout this match and throughout the entire pay-per-view, there was a lot of XFL references. Anytime someone would kick someone, he would bring up XFL. Anytime anyone would be in the air, it was XFL this, XFL that. It's just fun. It's fun to go back in time and hear references like that and wonder, like especially if you don't remember that time period. You might think, what is XFL? And that might be a topic for another day, but definitely I recommend you going and Googling what XFL is.
Oh yeah, this is worth another segment in itself, but JR and King, they were both told to go ahead and anytime it comes up, go ahead and put over XFL the best you can, because this was when Vince McMahon and a couple of his other corporate cronies were legitimately trying to compete with the NFL in another type of football league, the Extreme Football League. And it didn't last, but it was worth looking into because there were several things that occurred in the inaugural season of the XFL. But JR trying his best to put over something.
Yeah.
He can put over anything, honestly.
Yeah, he tried his best, but we all know that just didn't work. But after the match, Jericho wins, climbs up, grabs the title. Backstage, he gets interviewed by Frost Tip Cole. And one of the things that I wanted to bring up is that Jericho, as a face, was never really that great on the mic. He just never seemed comfortable being a face on the mic.
Yeah, I could agree with you. I would say he's definitely one of the top guys on either face or heel, whatever direction he's going, but you and I would both agree that he's one of the best heels of all time. But he'd much rather be talking trash than trying to be the good guy and talk down on a guy like Chris Benoit.
Okay, so after that match, next match, another championship match. It was Ivory defending the title, the women's title, against China. And at this time, Ivory was part of Rights to Censor. She had Steven Richards out there with her. And I didn't really do a lot of notes for this match. And in fact, this match was kind of just a squash, but the person doing the squash lost in the end. But they were really, because the lead-in, China had a hurt neck, and then they really tried to sell this neck injury to her, which then led to a big WrestleMania comeback and win for her. But this whole match was really just a build to that, where they sold this really bad neck injury that China had. And even after the match, the announcers did a really good job making it seem really serious, and really had a lot of people worried about what had happened to China.
Yeah, and I'll sell this one a little bit because I had a little more appreciation than I think you will for this one. They do sell China pretty hard on this injury. She takes a spike pile driver from Val Venus, and I'll take any opportunity to talk about some of these Attitude Era guys who are really putting in work, like Val Venus. Venus hits her with a spike pile driver. She goes out with injury, and it leads to a segment of of mock interviews where Ivory is acting as China, and I think it's Val Venus acting as an impersonator of JR. He's wearing a cowboy hat, and it's a little bit hilarious, but it's not too much. But in the end, it ends up leading to a WrestleMania moment for China where she wins the women's title. And even with that, I don't appreciate her winning the women's title. I always looked at her as a legitimate Intercontinental Champion because she had her feud with Chris Jericho, which was pretty good at the time. So to bring her down to the women's title, I think was a little bit demeaning because she was always above that. But nevertheless, she did get her women's championship victory at WrestleMania after this pay-per-view. But the storyline leading up to this was pretty good, but the ending I didn't like. But it was all to set up WrestleMania a couple months after this pay-per-view.
Yeah, and then unfortunately, she gets the win at WrestleMania, wins the title, but just a few months later, she's completely out of the company, and that was really the last time we would ever see China inside the WWE, which is pretty sad.
Exactly, and it seems like we're getting into a routine here of talking about, what could have been with all these people, considering our Backlash 2000 when we talked about Chris Benoit. But China has since passed away. She is easily the most dominant women's wrestler ever. I think that goes without saying.
Ever.
But she had her moments. She should have had several more. But, life writes itself, so here we are.
All right, so after that match, we got the next match, and there was a couple backstage segments to set this up, but it was Kurt Angle, the defending champ, with Trish Stratus in his corner, going up against Triple H with, of course, Stephanie McMahon, Helmsley in his corner, and I really did not like the lead up to this match. I hated how Trish Stratus was involved. I hated the whole her dating Vince thing, and then her feuding with Stephanie. It just keep that out of the main event, out of the title picture.
And I agree with you. You've voiced this to me before. This match was much more, for some reason, about Trish Stratus and Vince McMahon and Stephanie McMahon than it was Kurt Angle versus Triple H, because the match itself was good. It was a little bit underwhelming from two guys who you'd expect to put on great matches. But the storyline, even in the match, came down to Trish and Stephanie, and Vince would come out, and it was all kind of, you could expect it a little bit. And this main event, as it were, for at least the singles perspective, it wasn't very good.
Damn it, Vince. If you could just keep yourself out of a main event storyline for just a second, that would be fantastic. And then when he comes out he just had to come out, break up Trish and Stephanie's fight, and then he carries Trish out from the ring area. Stephanie, it was trash in my opinion. It took a good above average match and kind of made it a little average to below average.
Yeah, I'm not going to argue with you on this one. Vince coming out was, I was expecting it the whole time because you knew that Trish and Stephanie were going to get involved. Had they not been involved, I think Kurt and Triple H could have put on a pretty good match because these are both really good in-ring guys. The match became pretty technical inside with Kurt Angle doing a whole bunch of suplexes and things like that, but you never saw Triple H winning this match to go on to WrestleMania even this early before WrestleMania, so I really didn't like it. I expected Kurt to win by some type of DQ or something like that, and it turns out we got Stone Cold Steve Austin. Yeah,
that was definitely the highlight of this match. There was a couple really good spots, and Earl, I know you're old, but Triple H hits Kurt Angle outside the ring with a steel chair, and then Earl looks at him, sees the chair right next to him, and he was standing right next to him. He heard it. But he's like, oh, I didn't see anything. I'm old.
Yeah, Earl. Super old Earl Hebner.
Yeah. Then that brawl happened, but then yeah, Earl takes quite a few bumps in this match. He gets his head slammed into the barricade, gets his head slammed into the ring steps. But he's down, and that's when Stone Cold takes the time to come in, and beat the bricks off of Triple H, busting him open. And this all stemmed from 3 weeks before. Stone Cold was wrestling Kurt Angle for the championship, and Triple H came out and prevented him from winning the title. So that's kind of where all of that stemmed from, and where the action in the Royal Rumble match stemmed from.
Prior to this, you see Triple H costing Austin the world title. He could have beaten Kurt Angle for the WWF Championship, and this eventually leads to the No Way Out pay-per-view the next month, when they have one of the most talked about 2 out of 3 falls matches between Triple H.
It was an amazing match.
It really was, and Triple H ends up winning it when they both collide with a weapon, and I really liked it. I love watching the match over and over, and this is the setup to that, really.
And it was a good setup, and then Stone Cold hits Triple H with the stunner. Triple H sells it for about 2 minutes. Kurt Angle crawls over, puts an arm on Triple H, and Earl counts 3 for about another 2 minutes with his slow-ass count that he likes to do when he's dead.
Very well said.
Damn it, Earl. What are you doing? Anyway, Kurt Angle retains. Like you said, didn't really expect it to go any other way. But you also didn't really expect at the time for Kurt Angle to go on to WrestleMania and headline, so you kind of knew something was going to be happening before WrestleMania.
Yeah, even though Kurt Angle was the champion here, he would lose to The Rock at No Way Out, which they wanted to set up Rock versus Austin again. But this was the preliminary early run by Kurt Angle to be one of the better champions of all time, and in my opinion, the best in-ring technical performer of all time. I'm a big Kurt Angle mark. I'll tell you this day in and day out.
Yes, you are. Yes,
but
you are.
This
and,
was part of the early run.
Later.
Yeah, we will. This was the early run by Kurt Angle, beating Triple H to add to his credibility and build his resume a little bit. But he would lose to The Rock eventually. But this wasn't a match that Triple H was going to win regardless.
No, and it's a far cry from a year ago. And they talk about how he had the most dominant first year ever. But if you remember from our Backlash review, he got squashed by Big Show not even a year before. So it's good to see that he rebounded from that.
Yeah, I'd still say he has the best dominant first year ever, but that squash match kind of put a damper on things, and you're like, well, maybe he's going to be nobody, but he ends up being a pretty good champion and eventually goes on to great things nevertheless.
Yeah. One of the best in-ring technicians, I'll just say that.
We'll argue about
it
later.
Okay, yeah, that's good. that we might get distracted. Anyway, backstage, Rock once again, as always, cuts a great promo. Had me rolling. He's one of the best on the mic of all time. But now we're getting into the main event, into the big match. It's the namesake. It's the Royal Rumble match.
Yeah, and in this one, I'd like to say that the video package lead up into this match was one of the most exciting and, I guess, best video packages. They really got me psyched for a Royal Rumble, and I love every.
It had you
Royal
thinking
Rumble.
Guys like Hardcore Holly were going to win.
Yeah, and because I'm a mark for Hardcore Holly, and I like guys like that. But this had me thinking maybe Kane could win, Undertaker, Rock, Austin. This had me thinking all kinds of different ways where I didn't think anybody could win before. Where the year before at 2000, I was like, oh, I'm certain Rock's going to win. But this year I was like, oh God, I don't know where to go. But this video package, regardless, is really good. Right before the match.
And that's definitely what lends to this pay-per-view and the Royal Rumble match being so good, is that you had that unpredictability. There was so much main event talent in this Royal Rumble match that you sit there and you try and think, logically, who's going to win? And of course, Stone Cold's the first name that comes up, but then you think, Undertaker, the American Badass, he has a shot at this. Kane's always dominant. You never know if they're going to pull the trigger on him. There were so many. The Rock. There was just so many options going into this one.
Yeah, and this match really made me believe. And this match is the definition of Kane's career. Kane is dominant throughout this Royal Rumble, yet he ends up being the last person eliminated after eliminating 11 people. You know, he never really got the recognition he deserved. I will say that day in and day out, every chance I get. But it had me thinking that maybe this was Kane's Royal Rumble. But at the end, who else but the guy who can sell tickets, Stone Cold Steve Austin?
Well, of course, you knew at the end of the day, it was going to be someone like Stone Cold, who they trusted more than anybody else to sell tickets, sell pay-per-views, to sell out arenas. You didn't think that The Rock was going to win, back-to-back Rumbles, but still, they made you think. The booking was fantastic for this. The way they portrayed Kane so dominantly, it was booked to perfection. The entire match was. And if you don't mind, why don't we go ahead and jump into this match?
Yeah, it's a pretty good match. Let's go ahead and dive into it.
Yeah, so the first thing we knew Rikishi was going to be number 30.
That's right.
We didn't really think, or at least I didn't really think anything was going to come of that. But I guess there were some people who thought maybe he would have a shot. However,
me and you have talked about this before. Rikishi had been, he was the driver in the injury of Stone Cold, so maybe somehow he was going to get some magical push. So for them to paint him as number 30 kind of added to that disbelief that, would they really push a guy like this? So it made you watch. It made you really think and hang out to the last bit. And, I never thought he was going to win it, but for them to bring him in at number 30, I think was pretty good.
Yeah, you're right. And that's something that I was talking to someone earlier today about, just what's wrong with the product now is that they had these long storylines back then, these long, drawn-out, multi-layered storylines that had you guess from start to finish, and the way they would interweave them into different pay-per-views, into other storylines, it was a work of magic, and it had you thinking guys like Rikishi, like, hey, he's been involved in some main event storylines, and he was also in some main events for the title. This could be his time. You never know.
Yeah, and I love the role that they had Kane play in this matchup. He eliminated a whole bunch of dudes, a record that lasted for a long time. He's one of the most dominant guys ever. And I guess yeah, too bad for Roman, but all records are made to be broken, I guess. But he had a dominant run in this hardcore Royal Rumble, as we'll get to here in just a second. But he lasted until the last man, and you can never really beat Stone Cold Steve.
No, because Stone Cold won't let you. Anyway, the match starts. Jeff Hardy and Bull Buchanan are 1 and 2, and that's real exciting stuff there. Not really the best way to start, in my opinion.
You know that most of these start off with a jobber, or they either start out with a jobber guy who who has no chance of winning, or they start out with a guy like Chris Benoit who's like, oh man, I could kind of believe that, or Shawn Michaels, where you're like, could he go all the way? But you knew that Jeff Hardy at the time, or Bull Buchanan, wasn't going to go the distance in this.
No, and then Matt Hardy comes out, and they eliminate Bull Buchanan, and then they start wrestling each other. They take their shirts off, and that sends the crowd into a frenzy because
the girls were all
the
about
90s,
that one.
2000s. Yeah, I like how Jeff wore his like a prep, like he wore the sweater around his waist.
Yeah, he tied it around his waist. I remember that's what got him eliminated because Matt pulled him off with that thing.
Yes, but Jeff and Matt were very sloppy in the ring against each other. There was definitely some spots where things just were not going their way.
Yeah, Jeff goes for an attempted drop kick on a rebound off of Matt Hardy, and Matt Hardy doesn't catch any of the drop kick off the rebound from the ropes, and he acts like he gets hit. He sold it, though, and I'm like, all right, Matt, go ahead, sell your shit, whatever, man, I'll believe you.
Yeah, so all these guys are in. Drew Carey comes in. I believe
Drew's out number 5. Yeah.
5, yeah. And so he's in there with the Hardys, and then Kane. I believe Kane was 6.
Kane was
right?
6.
Kane came.
Yeah.
Okay. So yeah, Kane comes in, clears the. Well, actually no. Matt and Jeff take each other out. Then
Drew
Kane
Carey's
comes
alone
in
by himself in the ring, and Kane comes
and
out
he's
and
doing his
kind of
little
stalks him like some
congratulatory
prey.
hand. And he tries to offer him money. And why are you going to try and give Kane money? He sells insurance. He's got plenty of money.
Yeah, Kane doesn't know what you're doing. Just get out of the ring, Drew. But Drew tried. This was a marketing pitch, and Kane lit the fire on the turnbuckles, and Drew eliminated himself. My God, I hated this.
Yeah. Well, this was after Raven comes out and makes the save because Drew was going to get chokeslammed, but Raven, of all people,
That's
then
right,
comes out
Raven.
and makes the save, and then Drew then eliminates himself.
And when Raven comes out was really when you see the pace start to pick up, because this is when he was the hardcore champion at the time, I think, and you see Perry Saturn, Al Snow, Honky Tonk Man. We'll talk about that in a second, but Perry Saturn, Blackman, Grandmaster Sexton, they turn this into the hardcore Royal Rumble, where Kane really takes advantage of the weapons in the ring.
Yeah, you had all those guys come in. They're just blasting each other with stop signs, trash can lids. Steve Blackman comes out and has all his martial arts. I like Steve Blackman.
I like Blackman too.
He had zero person. Damn it, Vince. He deserves something.
Damn it, Vince.
Hashtag damn it, Vince.
Yeah.
I'll never get a job like that.
But this match, it really becomes a hardcore piece. They just start hitting each other with shit until Kane decides, you know what, I'm gonna eliminate everybody in the ring, and this sets up the number 12 entrance, which is the Honky Tonk Man.
I'm a Honky Tonk Man.
Yeah.
He's a Honky Tonk Man.
And the Honky comes out. He's got his goddamn guitar with him, and he hops in the ring. And Honky comes out. He's gonna play himself a song, and Kane decides to, I'm not about that life, and he hits him with his guitar, and it's a pretty good little moment there. And Honky gets eliminated by Kane, which sets up the number 13 entrance.
Why do you keep calling him Honky? It's killing me, boss.
Sorry. Yeah, Honky doesn't last long. It sets up number 13, which is The Rock, which I wasn't ready for The Rock to come out so early. Usually you see some of your heavyweight guys come out in 20 to 25 range and even later, and The Rock comes out at 13 to go one-on-one with Kane.
Undertaker, he doesn't come out till later. Stone Cold doesn't come out till the mid-20s, but The Rock coming out, and it definitely it got the crowd definitely into it, because Kane had been dominating, and they were eating that up. Kane was definitely over at the time, but then The Rock comes out, and that gets the crowd going. But they're also thinking, okay, now things are about to get serious, because you got The Rock and you got Kane, who's just been dominating. Kane eliminates 6 people in a row at one point. Yeah, that set up for the Rumble to definitely think business is about to pick up, as JR would say.
Right, and after The Rock, you see a bunch of mid-card guys, but this is really about Kane. Kane eliminates 11 people throughout this whole process. After The Rock at 13, you see the Good Father, Taz, Bradshaw, Albert, Bob Holly, K-Quick, Val Venus, William Regal, Test.
The young rookie K-Quick.
That's right. K-Quick turns out to be something pretty. He turns out to be something pretty entertaining in his later years, but leading up to number 23 entrance, which was the Big Show, and the Big Show came in, and the Big Show was he was trying to work. Yeah, the Big Show had been gone for a few months, and the crowd actually popped for him coming out, and he just comes storming into the ring and just chokeslammed every single person that was in that ring. All those people you named off were just getting chokeslammed left and right. But then he tries to chokeslam The Rock, who then kicks him in the family jewels, kicks him in the old grapefruits, and then eliminates him. And then that's when Big Show definitely got pretty angry, pulls The Rock out, and just destroys The Rock. And this is where they definitely booked Rock as a true babyface. He was being targeted by all the heels. All the heels kept trying to eliminate him. They kept beating on him, and then the Big Show coming out and just sending him through the table. That put the icing on the babyface booking cake there. Yeah, and The Rock is easily one of the best booked baby faces, true baby faces. After he turned, he held that for years, and then the Big Show put him through the table, and then we see the Undertaker come out at number 25, and we see Kane and the Undertaker kind of forming this unspoken bond between each other of the Brothers of Destruction, where they're double choke slamming Scotty 2 Hotty, and everybody's eliminated, and they're standing in the ring together waiting for the next competitor, and that's when we get number 27.
Yeah, and before this, you're thinking, okay, Rock's definitely getting beat up now. He's definitely getting set up for that heroic comeback. Maybe this is The Rock's time. They're booking him as that babyface that's going to come back against all odds. The fans are going to eat it up, and he's going to win this Rumble. However, like you said, number 27, Stone Cold, comes out, and he doesn't even make it to the ring before Triple H comes out and serves him up some revenge for what he did in the title match. He beats the bricks off Stone Cold left and right, and they had to bring in 5 to 6 referees to pull him off. It was definitely the same booking they were doing for The Rock just earlier. They did the same thing for Stone Cold when he came out.
Yeah, and I remember watching this, like, as it happened back in 2001. I'm like thinking, there's no way Austin's going to win this match. Like, this is just setting up to a feud between him and Triple H, because Austin was bloodied and everything, and Austin is pretty much down for the count. And you get guys like Billy Gunn, who I'm a big mark for, and Haku of all people. They come in and fill the ring.
The crowd definitely didn't give the reaction that they were hoping for with Haku.
Yeah, Haku was a bit of a failed attempt.
It was definitely just for Rikishi.
Yeah, and I was really waiting for The Rock at this point, because I remember watching it, like I said, when this was happening. I was like, well, Rock's going to come back and win this thing. He has to. But Austin ends up recovering a little bit and getting himself in the ring, and Billy Gunn, like I said, comes in at 28, Haku at 29, and Austin eventually recovers and finds himself in the ring.
Well, it wasn't until Rikishi came out at 30 that he walked by, he looked at Stone Cold, kind of gave him like a menacing look, and then was like, let me beat him up some more. And that's when Stone Cold came to life and opened up a can of whoop ass on Rikishi, put him into the ring, and just that's when Stone Cold started to just go into town.
Yeah, and
go to town. Town. He was already heading to town.
As the end of this was happening, like, I had no idea where this was going for a finish, because you had The Rock laying there, who was not out, but he was down and out on the top from the table, and you had Kane, and you had the Undertaker in the ring, and you had Austin recovering, and you had a guy like Rikishi coming in at 30, and you have an X Factor like Billy Gunn, and I'm thinking, well, God, I don't know who the hell's going to win this thing. Where are they going with it? This was really good booking, in my opinion.
I mean, we knew Billy Gunn wasn't going to win this, but he was in the Final Four of them. Yeah, and he did find himself in the Final Four.
Right.
He was the next one eliminated, though. One of the things that I wanted to bring up, how good was Taker's running DDT that he did, where he just jumped 5 feet into the air and did the DDT. I loved that thing.
And yeah, this is definitely something he did much more as the American Badass version of him than he did as the true Undertaker, if you will. That running DDT was menacing when the opponent would whip him into the ropes, and then they'd bend down to try to back body drop him, and he'd hit him with a running DDT. I mean, Undertaker, this is my favorite version of the Undertaker, even though the WWE seems to bury it.
Right, and it gets a lot of flack from people, because people just love the original, the Dead Man. But I loved Biker Undertaker. I loved, the big dog. The American Badass. Everything about the character was just awesome, and
this was
he was a fantastic
Calloway.
heel.
This is why he was so good at it, because this was really him. This was Mark Calloway playing his role, but being called the Undertaker, and he was really good at it. And he was a great heel for a couple of years until they decided to kind of drop the gimmick and turn him into the Dead Man again. But I loved it regardless.
Yeah, and he had that classic ladder match on Raw with Jeff Hardy.
With Jeff Hardy,
that was
great
definitely
match.
Yes.
For a second
Absolutely.
in my life, I thought Jeff Hardy could have won. He hit him with the chair, and JR was selling it. He said,
"On the
climb your
damn
ass
ladder,
off,
kid.
Climb your ass off, kid." And he did, but the Undertaker recovered. And, I mean, a lot of respect was gained for Jeff Hardy, storyline-wise, in that match by going up against the Undertaker like that.
Yeah, just a fan-fucking-tastic ladder match. And that doesn't happen if Undertaker's not the American Badass, not the Dead Man Inc., the heel that he was. It was just that character is what sold that match. But we got off on a tangent there.
Yeah, nevertheless, we were down to the top 4. Billy Gunn does get eliminated. We're down to The Rock, Kane, and Austin. And you got to think, for some reason, Kane's not going to win this thing, but yet they eliminate The Rock. Rock gets thrown over the top, and you're like, hold on, extended disbelief is kicking in. here comes Kane versus Stone Cold.
Yeah, this could definitely be Kane's time. What are they thinking? Are they really going to pull the trigger on him? However, Stone Cold I think it was Kane brings in the chair. He gets hit with a low blow. He stumbles out of the ring, goes and grabs a chair, tries to hit Stone Cold with it, and Stone Cold with the old gut kick takes the chair and just goes to town on Kane, and that was the beginning of the end for the Big Red Machine.
Yeah, there's a couple of really good chair shots that Kane takes, and he's one of the best at taking a chair shot and not falling, and kind of selling that I'm a big man, you're not going to knock me down, I'm an unbeatable type of big man, and he leans against the ropes to set up Austin for a big clothesline over the top. And I mean, it was a really good ending, but this really does break down Kane's career. A guy who will go nearly the whole match dominating, but then give it up to somebody else to take the title and hold the title.
One thing I would like to add, though, I have a quick question. Can Stone Cold does he just not know how to tie his boots? Because I'm pretty sure they become untied in almost every match that he has.
Okay, so yeah, almost every big profile match Stone Cold Steve
Learn
Austin
to tie your fucking shoes, Steve.
Anytime after 1999, his boots are untied for some goddamn reason. You're right. Good question.
And he always loses a knee brace somehow. I don't know.
He's got some.
Maybe that was
equipment.
Part of the charm.
I don't know. Maybe it was part of the gimmick. I don't know. It was all a work. We just don't know it.
He might be cheap. He does wear all black. I'm pretty sure he wears the same trunks every time.
Yeah, he travels with the same trunks. He never washes them.
Cheap motherfucker. But yeah, Austin. Austin gets the win. Tosses Kane out. He's going to WrestleMania, and then you start to think, is he going to go up against Kurt Angle? And of course, at this time, the crowd's going bananas. The New Orleans crowd is always a really good crowd. If you remember, they were the WrestleMania 30 crowd.
That's right.
With Daniel Bryan.
New Orleans is a great crowd. They really did this well. Austin was really drank in by the crowd. They were all about it. They didn't like the main event singles match between Kurt Angle and Triple H because both of them were kind of pseudo heels, so they didn't really like that. But they were all about Stone Cold. Yeah,
and then that crowd, that New Orleans crowd, I know it really well. I'm from Louisiana. That's kind of my area, and yeah, definitely. Kenny, cool hands, Kenny Silk the Cajun Oak.
Look it up on 2K, folks. NBA 2K 12,
yeah.
I think.
One of the best. Yeah, it was 2K. It was 2K12. He was one of the best power forwards the Indiana Pacers have ever seen. Anyway, I know that area really well. I know that crowd. They are very good, just pure wrestling fans. They follow the product. They'll cheer the faces. They'll boo the heels. They know a good match when they see it, and they are definitely one of the better crowds when WWE does a pay-per-view there. And you can definitely tell, because if a match isn't great, they'll still cheer, but they're not going to give you all their effort. But when you put in the work, they definitely give you a good reaction. And you saw that with Stone Cold winning. Some of these other matches that were really solid,
they popped Chris Jericho.
Yeah. And then, like I said, with WrestleMania 30, they did the same thing when Daniel Bryan won. There was not one person in that crowd that didn't do the yes chant. So it was definitely a good crowd.
Yeah, overall, I think they liked it. Austin gets his third Royal Rumble victory, which is a record. He's the only one to win it 3 times. I think if anybody deserves that title, it's probably him. He's probably the most over guy who can sell a ticket ever. Yeah. So sure, if they want to give that to him, I'm fine with it, because it does lead to a pretty good WrestleMania 17 match where he goes heel against The Rock, and even No Way Out leading up to it is pretty good. So the booking to end it is pretty good. I don't mind Kane, leaving as the guy who is the last one eliminated, but who did 90% of the work throughout the match. That's just how he is. So overall, the match itself was really good.
Yeah, and I'm glad you brought up the record for most Royal Rumble wins, and I do think that that's something that probably should stay the way it is with him. Absolutely. Holding the record. I don't think someone like Cena should tie that record. I do think Cena should tie the Flair record, but I think the Royal Rumble record should stand for a long time.
I think Cena will eventually break the Flair record, but this particular one I think should only be Stone Cold's, just because of the guy he was at the time through the Attitude Era. This should be his for forever.
Absolutely, and like you said, this set up to a very solid main event at WrestleMania 17 between him and The Rock. You had the much maligned heel turn where he aligns with Vince. However, that did lead to some very good segments. Stone Cold really put his heart into trying to be a heel, and
this led to the Alliance as well, the WWF versus the Alliance.
Yeah, it also led to the infamous "what" chants.
What?
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 What? Classic.
Absolutely hated it. He worked as a heel for me because I was never a big fan of him. So when he turned heel finally, it definitely worked for me. I had no problems booing him.
Exactly, because I was always a Rocky guy, so I always hated Stone Cold because he got more reaction from the crowd than The Rock did. So when he went heel, I was all about it. Because I've always been a Rock guy. I'll always be a Rock guy. So Austin is a heel, even though I think it didn't work the way they planned. I loved it.
Absolutely, and in fact, I think it made him even more of a face once he turned again. And he's just not someone the crowd will ever hate. There will never be anyone who will boo him in his life.
Yeah, and he deserves that. He's the guy who will sell the most tickets ever. And he deserves this win.
Yeah.
And in general, he deserves to be the name of this pay-per-view, and moving on to WrestleMania 17 after this.
Yeah, and once again, this was a solid pay-per-view. A lot of the build-up had to do with Stone Cold, and at least he was actually a part of the matches this time. But yeah, all in all, I think this was a very solid pay-per-view. It was one of the better Royal Rumbles of all time. Definitely one of my favorites, and that I've watched multiple times. And I'm not one for really watching these kind of pay-per-views over and over again, but this is one that I've watched multiple times for sure. Especially when I'm at the gym doing cardio, I like to watch wrestling stuff, and this is one that I'll regularly put on.
Yeah, this is a big one for me as well. I call this one the Hardcore Rumble because I love Kane, and I love the hardcore weapons being thrown into it, and I love Kane going off on this, and I even love him being the last one eliminated because, like I said, it just breaks down his whole career. And I love the whole pay-per-view, even though the matches were not as great, especially the Kurt Angle versus Triple H match. But I will watch Jericho and Benoit over and over and over again at every single pay-per-view that they ever do.
Absolutely, I can't agree with you more on those because, Chris Jericho, Chris Benoit were always two of my favorites. They always put on good matches. Kurt Angle, Triple H, they always put on good matches, but this one just didn't really hit all the key notes for me. But all in all, very good pay-per-view, and I really enjoyed reviewing this one with you, Bubba.
Yeah, this was a good one. I'm glad we picked this one, and I can't wait to move on to the next one.
Yeah, and I'm definitely excited to get in there, do some more research, and keep moving forward, keep doing more reviews, and I definitely look forward to our next one. Really, I just look forward to hanging out and talking wrestling, really.
Yeah, we could talk wrestling forever, and we'll have several topic conversations after this one, I'm sure. But nevertheless, it's always great to talk with you about this.
Yeah, absolutely. And this has been our pay-per review for the Royal Rumble 2001. Let us know what you thought about this pay-per-view in the comments section below, along with any suggestions you have for future shows, pay-per-views you might want us to review, any topics you want us to cover, like favorite wrestlers, favorite matches, things like that. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. This has been the Collar and Elbow Wrestling Podcast, and as always, we do this for the love of wrestling, and together, we can make wrestling great again. Really, I just look forward to hanging out and talking wrestling, really.
Yeah, we could talk wrestling forever, and we'll have several topic conversations after this one, I'm sure. But nevertheless, it's always great to talk with you about this.
Yeah, absolutely. And this has been our pay-per review for the Royal Rumble 2001. Let us know what you thought about this pay-per-view in the comments section below, along with any suggestions you have for future shows, pay-per-views you might want us to review, any topics you want us to cover, like favorite wrestlers, favorite matches, things like that. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. This has been the Collar and Elbow Wrestling Podcast, and as always, we do this for the love of wrestling, and together we can make wrestling great again.